Here we are on Yamaha's 2019 YZF-R6. 20 years of Yamaha R6. The Tuning Fork brand's been building this bike for 20 years. Isn't that crazy? 20 years of making a razor sharp, lightweight, extremely well handling 600cc inline 4 powered super sport. Back in the day when Yamaha made these bikes, they were selling like hotcakes. They couldn't build them fast enough. The racing 600cc racing class was really strong at the time. The price for one of these bikes back in the days was very low. I remember I bought a 99 YZF-R6 brand new, and I think it was $7,000 if I remember. $7,000 brand new. Fast forward today and it is $12,200, so $5,000 more expensive than it was 20 years ago. But for that money, for that price, you get a lot of bike for your money. So you get a lot more for your money these days. Traction control, ABS, D-mode adjustable throttle mapping. All those features are now standard on today's YZF-R6. Now 600cc sport bikes always get a bad rap for riding on the street. Yes, they're lightweight, yes, they're agile, but they have really peaky engines, and the ergonomics on the motorcycles aren't the most accommodating. When you're a younger person with lots of flexibility, they're not so bad, but as you get a little bit older, a little stiffer. The flexibility that getting on these bikes requires can get a little bit tough. But reacquainting myself with this R6 again, this thing is quite a nice machine. It's thin, it's pretty short from front to back, even though it is a 600cc, and even though yes, you've got to rev the hell out of this thing. Gotta have the engine spinning north of 10,000 RPMs for it to go anywhere. It does have some decent low and mid-range torque. Decent for a 600. Of course, compared to a liter-size bike, the liter class bike's gonna blow this thing out of the water, out of the hole, but it still has enough grunt to get off the corners. The clutch works really well. Doesn't have a crazy amount of pull. It's not heavy. It's very responsive. The gears are aptly proportioned. First gear, second gear, third gear. They're not crazy spaced out. It's easy to keep the engine zinging in the meat of the power where it needs to be to accelerate. And away we go. It sounds so thrilling to give this bike the beans and rev her out. It's always fun to cut corners too on these bikes. That's what these things are really designed for anyways. Love hearing that engine sing. Now you have to remember, this engine in this bike is 11 years old. Yamaha last updated the powertrain 11 years ago. But even though this engine's very old in terms of its design and architecture, it still feels fresh, it still feels new. Some of the credit goes to Yamaha just engineering a power plant that was ahead of its time, and also some of the credit goes to the D-mode electronic throttle response system, so you can switch the throttle response. We're in standard now, but if we want the throttle to be a little sharper, we put it in A mode. Conversely, if you're a newish rider or someone who wants to experience the YZF-R6 in a more manageable, more friendly way, you can put it in B mode, and that dulls the throttle response a little bit. Makes it easier to ride, easier to get a feel for. Engine in this bike, it doesn't vibrate excessively. Yeah, there is some engine vibration there, but wouldn't deem it unreasonable. And that's why riding a 600 Super Sport is so fun on the streets here. You can just zip in and out of traffic so easily. With a full tank of fuel, this bike only weighs 420 pounds. It's extremely lightweight. It's got strong brakes, so you can slow down in a pinch. ABS now to prevent wheel lockup, tire lockup. Sneak right to the front here, right where we belong. The air induction noise from the engine, just the whirl of the motor, it sounds so good. Even when you launch and release the clutch, the sound the engine makes is really nice. At the same time, the titanium muffler does a good job quelling that noise. If you're a passerby standing on the side of the road, you're not going to hear anything out of the tailpipe. Back in the day, when we used to really test these bikes, we'd actually put a sound level meter on the exhaust and these Yamahas would always register. I would always be amazed at how quiet these bikes would register at idle and at half max engine RPM. So max RPM on this bike's 15,800 RPM. So we would measure half max right around 8,000 RPM, and at 8,000 RPMs these things would make less than 101 decibels, I think. Now idle it made around 72 decibel if I can remember correctly. It's just always amazing how Yamaha was able to cap that performance and keep the noise down, because yeah, loud pipes save lives, but they also annoy people and cause unwanted attention from law enforcement and other people. So if you can keep that noise isolated to the cockpit, so you are hearing the cool sounds but your neighbors aren't, that's the way to roll. Instrument panel on this motorcycle, yeah, it's not the fancy iPhone 6 size TFT color display of the YZF-R1, but I like this thing. I like the analog swept style tachometer. Yeah, it's a little old school, but I like the way it looks. It's easy to read, it looks sweet. That LCD readout here that flanks it, again, pretty easy to read,